Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Shooting the Shit with Yankee. As always, I'm Yankee, so let's start shooting. Today's topic is a little complicated. It's one that is based on a question someone asked me in an email yesterday. And it's, do I think someone selling a gun, be it a private individual or a business, should they have a legal obligation to make sure that person buying the gun is a person who can legally own it and isn't the type of person that's going to go out and do something crazy? Or do they have some liability if they somehow don't vet that person and they do something crazy with it? Or is that totally on the person? I think that spurred from something I said the other day about when people resort to violence, it's their fault and their fault only. So I want to know what you all think. Now, I will start us off here, and I'm going to say, well, there's lots of ways you can approach this. You know, do you think businesses have a obligation to make sure someone is legal before they sell them a gun, or does someone's legal right to buy a gun override that? And it should be like housing. You know how like when you're providing housing or you run a hotel, you can't say, I'm vetting people before I let them stay. They have a right to stay there. It's a constitutional right. So if someone's free on the streets and they have a constitutional right to buy a gun, should a gun shop be able to deny them? Well, when you look at it like that, I'm not sure. I don't even know if they should be able to deny them. Unless there's extenuating circumstances. Because like with a hotel, if people come in blind, stinking drunk, and they're being disruptive and, you know, all this other stuff, and I say, I ain't going to rent to you because you're blind, stinking drunk, and you've shown me that you're probably going to be a problem. Well, I'm not discriminating on them against something that's protected. So I guess if someone comes into a gun shop and they're ranting and raving, they're going to kill their wife. Well, of course you're not going to sell to them. But if they come in and they act like a normal, decent person, and they don't give you any red flags while they're there, I don't think a gun shop should be responsible, even if there was no 4473, because you see a legal, law-abiding citizen, as far as you know, because they're not in jail. So they should have a right to keep and bear arms. And you standing in the way of that because of something you suspect, that almost seems like a violation of someone's constitutional rights to me. So I have kind of a feeling like that. But I do believe there is some liability to a certain degree if you just blatantly ignore red flags. Like someone comes in and says, I'm going to kill my wife, and you sell them a gun and someone can prove that. Well, then, yeah, you should have some liability. That was a bad decision. If I, as an individual, sell a gun to someone who comes up and wants to buy my gun, they got, gang tattoos on their face and they don't want to show me any ID. They just whip out a roll of cash and they pay. Well, I think I should have some liability if it gets used in a gang crime, because I have to be pretty stupid to know that. But the level of proof for that should have to be pretty high to show you had reason to believe they're not a law-abiding citizen. So I don't know if I believe it. Now, especially now with businesses, since 4473s do exist, I think they should have no liability. Someone comes in, passes a 4473, that the very fact that exists shows the government has taken all liability for that person, period. They've said, you don't get to decide, we decide. So because the 4473, which is why most gun shops are okay with it and support it, because it takes liability off them, puts it on the government. So if you sell a gun to someone, they pass the background check, and then they go out and do whatever heinous thing with it, gun shop should be free of any liability, any scrutiny. You know how people always go to like, you sold a gun to this person who then committed a mass shooting. You should be ashamed. No, they passed a 4473. So the government should be ashamed. But like I said, complicated question. That's kind of how I feel about it. Let's go see what everybody else thinks. Oh, and remember, if you want to help support this channel, go on over to my website, TYMPpistolproject.com. There's all kinds of giveaways going on right now, giving away guns, knives, patches, everything. Go on over there and see what we got given away. Or you can just buy some merchandise. That always goes to support the channel, like my Willie versus Bruce shirt here. There's that I drew myself. All my designs are hand-drawn by me. So go over and buy a little piece of artwork from me to you, help support the channel. Or become a Patreon or Subscribe Star supporter while you're over there. Get yourself some patches, etc., and help support the channel. So please do so. And with that being said, let's get over here. Oh, and always, And as always, remember, subscribe and turn on notifications. All notifications. If you select some, you'll get none. Select all because this is a restricted channel. All right, let's go over here to the question, responses to the question. John M. Mandrick says, legally depends on if your state requires a background check. Morally, I think so. I wouldn't sell to a person I felt was off. Well, yeah, but see, there's a big difference between morally obligated and criminally or legally liable, because, legally liable gets you put in jail. Morally, you just feel bad and people might scrutinize you, shun you a little bit, which I'm fine with that. But if someone's a free citizen and they don't set off a lot of red flags, I think their right to keep and bear arms is, you have a right to assume that they have that right. And unless you have really specific evidence to the contrary, which we've all denied gun sales to someone because they felt off. But like I said, as far as businesses go, the 4473 means they don't have to worry about it because it's the government's problem, which is why I said they like them. Andrew Avila, I believe it's everyone's right to own a firearm. I also believe it's my obligation if I feel someone is off to not sell to them a firearm. I've heard you say you require some form of ID. CYA, right? I don't know what that means. But yes, I always told people when they came to me to buy, because I'm like, everybody's got an ID, especially if you drove up to buy the gun, you've got a driver's license. And if you don't want to show me that, that could be a red flag that maybe something's wrong. Maybe you don't live in my state. That's one thing. Maybe if you don't want to show, and I've had that happen before. I've had people show up, buy a gun from me before, and I'm like, okay, well, I just need to see your ID because your tags on your car are, from California. And I'm like, well, I need to see that you're actually a Washington resident because that's all it can sell to. Back when we could do private sales. And they're like, oh, well, I just moved here. I'm like, well, okay, well, have you got your driver's license? And they're, no, it still says California. I'm like, well, then I can't sell to you. And that's my obligation to not take that liability because they gave me reason to think something might be going wrong because they didn't volunteer that information. And that story makes sense that they could have moved here, but I'm not taking that liability. And it wasn't the craziest story in the world. I've had people show up with gang tattoos on their face and stuff like that and show me their stuff, and even show me their CPL. So you can always never tell how by someone looks. I've had people show up looking like a gang member, pants sagging down around their ass, pull up in, like a Mercedes all done up with, lowrider stuff, and then show me their CPL and their driver's license. A nominal snowman. Question is, Brock Lesnar God or something greater? Well, that ain't got nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. Brock Lesnar is a beast. I'm not a fan of Brock Lesnar, though. And I honestly don't think he should be in the WWE right now with what legal issues he has involving that case with Vince McMahon. In fact, there was someone in the first row of that WrestlePalooza event the other night that says he shouldn't be here, and we all know why. And I think we know what they're talking about. That person was in like a $4,000 seat, and they used that time to put that sign up there. Yeah, those seats can run $4,000, those prime front row seats. Sean Bain says, I can refuse to sell to anyone. It's my property. A retailer, it can be a slippery slope. Yeah, it is definitely more, I think, if you have like a business license that your business is providing this service to people, well, then it's a little trickier about who you can say no to. And anyone that passes a 4473, I don't know if you should be able to say no to them. But as an individual, I think you have a lot more right to deny someone. Like how I always say, you got to have an ID. You got to show me ID before I'd sell something to you. And I don't think that's too much to ask, but you'd be surprised how many people got offended because they were asked for an ID. Excuse me, I'm choking on my water. Mr. Furley said FFL should have a right to refuse service. Well, you do have a right to refuse service to a point. However, would you say an FFL should have a right to refuse service because someone came, like say they're an FFL in Michigan. Someone comes in to buy a gun and they're like, now they're black. We got a real problem with black gangs here in Michigan and Detroit. Should they be allowed to deny that person service for that? Because now they're violating their right to own a firearm and their right to not be discriminated upon because of their race. So, it's more complicated than a lot of people like to pretend it is, I think. Edgar Cortez said for gun stores, the 4473 in background check is sufficient. In private party sales, this is not practical. However, if the purchaser is acting irrationally, the seller should have the right to refuse the sale. If they're acting irrationally, crazy, we're telling you they're going to break the law. Yeah, because I do believe you have some liability. I think you have the right to refuse service. Now, if the government said, everyone has a right to buy a gun, and if you refuse them service, you're going to have to answer to the government, then they'd have to offer you some sort of protection against that liability. Ruining this whole video by coughing my head off. Hold on, let me take a second here. I'll try to remember to cut that out. Go Shadow weighed in here, and he's our next to the last person weighing in, and said, same as selling a car, have right to refuse, but no legal requirement to verify your buyer. Should also have free or super cheap to get ATF check if you want. See, now that would be nice if you had, everybody's got a phone now. If there was a way like how you go on Carfax, if they were willing to give you their social security number, or just their name and address or whatever, and you could put it into a data bank and it came back and said clean, they got no records. You don't get to see their records or anything, but it's clean, like they've been in no accidents. That would be a service I would be okay with, as long as it was voluntary, and that system already exists. You can check people's criminal record. You can do it when you rent a house or rent them an apartment. That was Go Shadow. Now we got Colin Hepburn as our last person weighing in here, and he's the one that donated the gun back to be able to make some more money for pets and vets. Let's hope we do. He said, legally, yes, but private, you need to be responsible. Don't be a dumbass and sell to the wrong person. Don't give them more reason to take away rights. Well, I don't know if they need more reason to try, but we all should be responsible. I do believe that. And if they can show that, hey, this person came up, told you, I got to buy it from you because I can't buy one legally, and then you sell it to them and they do something wrong with it, well, then you're going to have some liability there. And if they can prove that, you should be legally liable. If they told you they couldn't own it and you sold it to them anyway, and then they do something wrong with it. Now, if you just sold it to them and 5 years from now, they get pulled over in a traffic stop just for, their blinkers out, and the cop finds the gun and they trace back to you, they're like, you're liable because you sold it to someone who can't possess it. Well, then I'm like, no, they didn't do anything wrong. So why would you be responsible for any crime? No crime was committed, because most people who can't legally buy a gun, even if they buy one successfully, they're not going to commit a crime with it. So as long as they don't commit a crime with it, you should have no liability whatsoever. Them just possessing it shouldn't be something that they can ding you for. But with that, I'm going to say that's it for us today on this topic. We will be doing the Merc Guns and Freedom immediately after this. But for now, that's it. How about you out there in YouTube land? What do you think on this question? It is a little complicated, but feel free to weigh in the comment section below. And if you want to weigh in on one of these topics in person, come to one of our live chats. We do them every day at 6 p.m. Every day at 6 p.m. So come on in, be part of the group. Enjoy the camaraderie. That's probably not the only thing to enjoy over here. I'm not all that entertaining. But like I said, come on in. And for those that showed up today and participated, thank you very much. I appreciate it, especially those of you that help support the channel. With that being said, I hope to see everybody again tomorrow. Until then, remember, always carry and stay safe till I see you again.